Hello there, my name is Lee Davey. I am not an alcoholic and I refuse to be anonymous. And today my guest is Ricky Siegel. How's life, Ricky?
Very well, thanks. Good to be with you.
You had a little giggle then.
Yeah, I do like the sound of that.
Well, I think it's important. We here at the Strive Community Forum and the Truth About Alcohol, we don't really like the word alcoholic, to be honest. We believe that alcoholism is an invisible, violent, dominant belief system. One of the reasons that system remains invisible is because, boom, up there is this alcoholic guy, and it's normally a guy who's a complete fucked up mess. And as long as we're never like him, then we can continue to drink as many beers and bottles of wine as we like. So we kind of break down that barrier and say, actually, we're all on the same spectrum, a spectrum that kind of goes like that. It's a bit of a slanted spectrum. Right. I like Alan Carr's metaphor of the pitcher plant, actually. You get stuck in this, you go in there because of the sweet taste of nectar, and the more and more you eat while you're in there, the fatter you become. And when you got to fly off, you can't, Yeah, I like that one. So how's life, Ricky? What have you been up to?
Busy. Just finished a book that's in print now called The Art of Sex Therapy Supervision. So that had consumed me for the past 17 months, just co-editing. I can't imagine how people write books. It was hard enough to write just a couple chapters. But I am thrilled. I couldn't be more happy with the career that I've fallen into. I'm a sex therapist and train other therapists and medical professionals to do sex therapy and sexual medicine. But I came to this in a series of happy accidents from the addiction treatment field.
Right.
Always felt my original background was pharmacology and toxicology, and came through clinical toxicology into addiction, and just always felt like something was missing in the diagnosis and the treatment, aside from the obvious that addiction doesn't exist as a clinical term. In the DSM, it's not a diagnosis that a clinician can put on someone. So then that just adds to the problem of it being user-defined and more of a pop culture concept than a clinical one. So that's been frustrating for very many years. And then in getting into the sex addiction debate, which I had been I've been working in treatment centers for about the past 25 years, doing groups on sexuality issues in addiction treatment and recovery. It was also the theme of my doctoral dissertation, primarily because I thought it was just such a resisted topic anywhere in the recovery culture, not just in treatment centers, but in the 12-step world. Anytime anyone would bring up anything to do with sex, and we all know that sex connects to relapse, whatever we call that process, in so many ways, but nobody ever wanted to talk about it. People would be literally interrupted, gently, lovingly, but still interrupted, like, we don't talk about that here. It's something you want to talk to your sponsor about. Or maybe see a therapist, which was totally on AA. And this nagging thing just grew from the concept of sex addiction, which I've always found to be specious. It just kind of broadened to addiction in general and had me thinking over decades, what exactly are we talking about, and where is the person's agency to be able to live their life? And maybe we need some help, we need some guidance, but the whole pathological view of glomming onto somebody, you're diseased, you're broken, you will be for the rest of your life, and this is how you have to go about it now, just seemed
a bit yucky. A bit yucky. Yeah. There's a medical term for you. It seems a bit yucky.
Right.
I mean, it is ridiculous when you think about it. That I think it's almost like the institutions that are responsible for growing this belief system that alcohol is normal and pleasurable, it's almost like addiction is like protected. So it has to be like drugs. Drugs has to be addiction, nothing else, because drugs are illegal in most places in the world, not all, obviously. Drugs are illegal, so we can hang that up there. But these legal things like alcohol, I mean, that's not a drug. That's why people call it alcohol and addiction, right? And then, you know, when you think about all the reasons why you drink alcohol and all the reasons why you take drugs, and all those things are there present when it comes to sex, and all those things are there when it comes to love and eating chocolate or having some coffee or going for a run every single day, or playing video games. Yeah.
Right. Well, we see that protected little belief is really strongly protected and easily threatened, right? So this idea that any human behavior that we engage in to change our mood or to feel better or because we're bored or because we just feel like it is immediately seen with suspicion. Like,
it dilutes. I think it dilutes the message for the people who are carrying the torch, right? We're carrying the torch of addiction in drugs. It's only drugs only, and it's terrible, blah, 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 blah. But if we then come along and say, well, actually, did you know there's kids in Korea chopping their own hands off because they're playing too much video games? Or probably in your line of work, chopping it off because they're too busy doing something else with it. You know, people don't want to dilute it, do they? So they don't go there. They say, oh, no, sex addiction, what a load of nonsense. That's not addiction. Video game addiction, that's not addiction. That's something completely different. So sex addiction, I don't know. I've never really given it too much thought myself. I mean, I've had a lot of sex problems and issues around it. Certainly believe that I had an addiction to pornography. So if I have, let me ask you the question. If I have an addiction to pornography, does that mean I have an addiction to sex?
Well, a lot of times those terms are used interchangeably. I also happen to believe it's never about the porn. It's just a convenient way to, again, continue that belief, continue that philosophy. And kind of like we see, I don't want to get too controversial, but kind of like with religion, certain religion, you don't question the dogma because that's dangerous. So it just is. You know, my biggest frustration with the idea of sex addiction is that it short circuits. It just completely cuts off the entire diagnostic process that people in my professions are supposed to embrace. So in other words, somebody's doing something. Our job is to figure out why.
Yeah.
Is coping mechanism, what's going on? Is there an underlying pathology? With this addiction model, it's called that because the field calls it that. I don't know what the hell the addiction model is, but that model says the symptom is the disease. So it just cuts that off. We don't need to get into why you're doing it. You're doing it, so stop doing it and work this program for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
I treated a guy that was masturbating about 25, 30 times a day.
Wow.
Causing physical harm to himself, not to mention the fact never leaving his house and surfing porn for 10, 12, 14 hours a day. This guy needed a life, and he needed to get in touch with what he was compulsively seeking to medicate, which was a boatload of anxiety. And I mean, he had a laundry list of issues that were more or less treatable through psychotherapy and psychopharmacology. But instead, the message was, abstinence and a program of recovery.
Okay.
I mean, here's something nobody talks about. The euphemistic language we use, right? Like looking at porn. Like, really? Both hands on the computer, are they? Right? Just looking, no other activity going on. Like we say, sleeping together, wink, wink. Like it's a slumber party or something. So all this euphemistic language for looking at porn helps us to avoid talking about what we're really too uncomfortable and I think a little too childish to discuss, and that's masturbation. That's what people are doing to porn 99.9% of the time. That's
that point you make there, Ricky, is a really good one. Listeners, if you're listening to that, what Ricky's talking about there is very similar to alcoholism, and then if there's any vegans watching this, carnism, same type of thing, is the way that we make the act or the process of what we're doing in our whatever we choose to be addicted to, in this case alcohol, Ricky's talking about sex, is it's hidden. So the words and the terms we use is hidden. So a good example, like Melanie Joy, who's been a guest on his show, she says you don't often get to see inside a slaughterhouse, right? You know, we call cow beef, we call lamb sheep, whatever, pig pork.
Right.
And it's these words we use to hide what the real issue that's going on. And like Ricky says, I think this is really important. There's a lot of demonizing around masturbation, anything to do with sex, really. If you were, I've had it here myself on Strive Community Forum. You know, if I openly talk about my sexual experiences, people have come to me and said, whoa, I don't want to hear about your wife's orgasms, and I feel really uncomfortable about that, and I'm going to leave if you carry on. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's a bit strange. I'm not used to that, because I'm an open book, Ricky. I like to just talk about everything, and I'm cool and calm with that. You know, if somebody says to me, oh, you've still got thrush, I say, yeah, it's still itchy, and I've still got it, and there's no problem. I don't care about that. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
There you go, Ricky. That's just me.
Yeah.
I have a question to ask you, and this question will kind of like create the basis of what we're going to talk about here. Okay, so this is from a Strive Community Forum who will remain anonymous. Okay, and they posted this. It's a description of their life, but we'll talk about it a little bit.
Sure.
So this lady says, my partner and I have been together for almost 2 years. Okay, so know each other quite well, and their sex life was always very regular and very good. I don't know what regular very good means in their right. context. The man had been working up to trying to stop his drinking in his previous relationship to this 2-year relationship, and he had taken a month off here and there. And he'd noticed that when he'd done this, that he had lost his sexual libido. So this time round, when he had really said, right, I'm going to stop drinking alcohol, he tells his new partner this might be a little bit of a problem, right? So because he knew from his previous experiences, he didn't think about sex, he didn't think about porn. Okay. This actually happened. So he then stopped drinking, and all of a sudden there's no interaction. He's not really up for it. And she feels like she needs to be initiating it all the time, which makes her feel vulnerable to rejection. Right. She has spoken to him about it. So there's a dialogue there. She doesn't want to feel like desperate for sex, but for her, sex and love are linked, and they're really important in her relationship. It's a way that she feels desired, and she wants to get back to feeling that way. And she covets and desires a man and wants to have sex with him. She's feeling that biological urge. And she says they're down to having sex once or twice a week. I read that and I was like, boom, I'll take that. But everybody's different, right? Some people want it 1, 2, 3 times a day. So
actually, though, there was a study. I can't reference it. I don't recall the source, but I thought it was pretty interesting, where it seems that everybody tends to think that everybody else is having more sex than they are.
Right.
Everybody tends to think they're not having enough. Actually, the average is about once a week or 2, and everybody thinks that everybody else is having sex 2 to 3 times a week.
Until you have a baby, like I have, like 18 months ago, and then we're celebrating.
Congratulations.
No, I would say congratulate. I had sex last night. Congratulate me on that, Ricky. Hey, and I was good as well, apparently. That doesn't happen very often. Anyway, back to this young lady who's got a bit of an issue. Why would the act of quitting drinking result in a loss of libido and physical erections?
Well, okay, that's a complicated question to unpack. Firstly, pharmacologically, that doesn't tend to happen. You see things like, coming off of opiates or coming off of stimulants, you might have problems with libido and desire. It can happen with alcohol. I was particularly concerned. I think there was a further question about morning erections, which again, quitting alcohol. What a lot of people find is, especially if there was a real chemical dependency and a difficult withdrawal, is that loss of libido is just part of that resetting. That, their body, their brain chemistry has gone through a lot, and putting the bottle down, you're not necessarily sober the next day. It might take months for everything to just kind of reset to prior. Right. Now, there's a couple of hints in there that sexual success, let's say, and I hate to use those terms because so many guys especially think in terms of success or failure with what their penis is doing.
Yeah.
Which we'll get to that later. People misunderstand what the point is, and most sexual dysfunction comes about from anxiety and being in your head instead of with the person you are. So my hunch is that what's going on is just that in a word, inhibition. right? The alcohol provided enough disinhibition to rev up and have a higher sex drive and seek sex. And now perhaps for any one of a number of reasons, being sober just has him inhibited, maybe self-conscious, maybe with with a couple drinks in him, he's not worrying about his erection or his size or anything. In other words, that getting high helps us get out of our head, which sometimes, ironically, helps us be more present during sex. For a lot of people who are uncomfortable with that kind of naked intimacy, not literally naked, but that more figurative vulnerability.
Can I jump in there then, Ricky, with to add a personal flavour to that then, and because it might expand upon the point and help this person out. Let me think about this. Okay, so I've been, up until about 2 years ago, watching pornography regularly in one form or another since I was 8 or 9 years of age. And because I was doing that, I built up this narrative in my mind, part of my personality, that I loved sex. And I wouldn't say sex addict, but I really, really love sex. And of course, if you're drinking all the time and you're living with someone or you're with someone who's drinking as well, the likelihood is when you're drinking, you are going to have more sex, because that's just kind of what tends to happen. You get really drunk and you get a bit sexy with each other, and that's what happens, right? And then when I stopped drinking alcohol, when I was with my first wife, I really didn't want sex. Like I just didn't want it. What we talking about here, linking into this other guy as well, but also with myself personally, is what happened to me personally and could be happening to this guy. The fact that we're watching porn, as you said earlier on, you alluded to earlier on, is not really related to sex, right? But I've mistakenly related it to it. And my libido at the time anyway was always naturally low. Uh-huh. So when I stopped drinking, I just got back to who I was really, which was a guy who, could have had sex once or twice a month. But I thought I had a problem because I was jacking off the porn every night, and then related that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. But there's also, there's a lot in that.
Okay.
And I don't know that I would say that porn doesn't have anything to do with sex.
Okay, sorry.
Because, it's obviously its very design is to stimulate sexual fantasy and turn-ons and arouse a sexual interest. I mean, we're wired that way. You could hear the sound of lovemaking and our brain responds. So it's not that it's not about sex. And I think that's also part of the discussion, again, getting away from blaming the porn and looking at the issues we have with solo sex. A lot of college-age guys come to me worrying if they're sex addicts because they masturbate daily. And my usual response is, if you were in a relationship having sex daily, would you be standing in front of me complaining and worrying about whether you were an addict? And they say, no, I wish I was in a relationship having sex every day. And I say, you are. You're in a relationship with yourself. It should be a good, loving relationship. And you're having sex every day. Why is that problematic? But sex with a partner every day is not.
Right.
So what's when we get into, you said regularly, I would say frequently. Then we get into compulsively. Now there could be miles between those words. If you consider daily to be frequent, well, is that the same as 25 times a day? Where, this guy was beating himself raw and causing literal self-harm. Yeah. And again, had no life. So it was a consuming thing. Back to the point about, I've been seeing and other sex therapists as well. It seems to be a new and growing problem. Younger guys complaining about losing their libido very, very quickly in a relationship. Now, in our parents' and grandparents' day, back in the 40s, 50s, I don't know if you remember a Marilyn Monroe movie called The 7-Year Itch.
Yeah.
Where that phrase used to imply that 7 years into a marriage, people, presumably men, would start getting that wandering eye and that. Now I see that in 6 months, 7 months. Guys say the novelty wore off. They're not into it anymore. They say the same words that I've heard women in 30+ year marriages say that sex is a chore. It's too much effort. If I never had to do it again, I wouldn't miss it. It's like taking out the garbage. But yet a lot of these guys report solo activity.
Yeah.
So this also fits the addiction narrative, this idea that the porn has broken them and pornified their brain. You know, these hysterical websites like Your Brain on Porn and Fight the New Drug. This is all hysteria to me and completely baseless with any kind of scientific. It's more religion than science, in my opinion. So there's a lot there.
But this guy's in his 40s, same as
Early 40s, yeah. Now, the one thing also about not waking up with erections that the wife had noticed. Now, in terms of erectile dysfunction, that's diagnostic, and just in terms of physiology, that's really important. I mean, that's what penises do, and they're supposed to. And I would immediately send a guy to a urologist who says he doesn't get morning erections anymore. Because often ED, of course, has a physiological component. So 42 is not old, but depending on, we don't know if the guy's overweight, out of shape, diabetes, blood pressure, all of these factors contribute to a kind of a middle-aged metabolic syndrome. That's where drugs like Viagra really help, because unlike what a lot of people think, Viagra does nothing up here. It's just strictly a plumbing thing. It opens up blood vessels and allows that process, which is why a lot of people also don't know that the failure rate of these drugs, they're still thought of as miracle boner pills. But
wow, I seen it. I seen them. I was lining up in the chemist the other day to get something, and I seen the boxes there, and I just remember thinking, how much? They cost an absolute fortune. You've got to really like sex to buy Viagra these days, unless you're getting it off the back of a lorry somewhere. I remember once trying Camagra, a gel. Nothing happened. I remember trying it just to see what it would happen, but nothing happened.
Probably, yeah. Most of those products, especially the over-the-counter ones, are just complete bunk. And anything that's a cream or a lotion, I mean, this is ridiculous, but people have been buying these things for years. There used to be some bogus cream for women. There's a lot of hype around this amino acid called L-arginine. So there's this lotion, supposedly a woman would take this stuff and rub it on her clitoris. And gee, you think? Rubbing lotion on your clitoris? Wow, what a surprise that it has an effect. You can take olive oil and get the same effect.
That's so funny. That's so funny.
In the 50s, they had these creams women were supposed to rub on their breasts to make them grow bigger. We used to say, where's all these women with the giant hands?
Yeah.
They're rubbing this cream on with their hands.
I always remember my first wife saying to me, what is Viagra anyway? What's the point of it? And I said, well, you can take it, and then when I come, then I'll still keep an erection, so I'll be able to keep going and come again. And she said to me, she looked at me dead serious and said, well, what's the point of that?
Right.
As if to say, once will do, then get off.
Sure. But that could, it could certainly help with this other common problem of younger guys, rapid ejaculation, or what historically has been called premature, which I frankly hate because it sounds an awful lot like immature, and guys feel bad enough as it is. But rapid, obviously relative to the other partner, I've had women complain, you got to fix him. He's a rapid ejaculator. He can't last longer than 10 minutes. Like 10 minutes? That ain't rapid. There are guys that can't get their fly down in 10 seconds without going goop. And right. It also relates to anxiety. And, but see, even this musing about Viagra kind of underscores this idea that men, I hate to say this so boldly, but men are generally pretty clueless about sexuality, particularly women's sexuality, women's response. Heterosexual men who claim to love women don't generally know a whole lot about them, don't know about their sexuality, about what makes a woman enjoy sex and orgasm, and just go by that script from porn. That you get it up, you get it in, you get it off, and moving back and forth. And if you don't know what you're doing, just move it back and forth until the magic happens. Yeah. And then get it out and get a snack. So there's just not a whole lot of interaction, ironically, even when people are having intercourse together, very often they're just getting off together, and they're instead of having sex with each other. In other words, that being in the head thing I mentioned before.
Yeah, definitely. That sounds like
And
me.
alcohol also helps get us out of our head.
Mm.
It's the great disinhibitor.
Mm.
So this couple, there's, like I said, there's a lot there. There's a lot that a good sex therapist could help them unpack. That love sex connection that you mentioned is certainly not uncommon. And not just women. Men also often feel that that's the only way they're assured and can relax and feel confident in that love if they're having regular sex. But it's interesting, as I started to say, it's interesting to note how the classic low desire, even the diagnosis HSDD, hypoactive sexual desire disorder, when it appeared, it sounded like it was tailor-made for what women were complaining about, and like Oprah Winfrey Show and daytime TV, all of this female sexual dysfunction. 70% of women in one study said they complained of some sexual dissatisfaction. So it was obviously from more of a marketing perspective, there was this failed attempt, this drug that was touted as the pink Viagra that was just a dismal failure. But it's simpler than that, right? It's what people do together that requires the kind of disinhibition I'm talking about, to be free and have sex with abandon and not self-consciousness and worry and performance anxiety and all the other things.
Yeah.
So get back to that porn thing. The reason why it's even these folks, these anti-porn zealots, create their own diagnoses now. PIED, porn-induced erectile dysfunction. That guys say they can't even get an erection anymore without porn. It's broken them. And again, I would say it's not the porn. It's what's happening. First of all, compare solo sex to partnered sex, and especially solo sex with porn. You've got high levels of arousal and unlimited novelty. Somebody could search the internet for 10 years and never see the same image twice. And completely low or zero in terms of pressure, concern, worry about the partner's pleasure. It's like drive-in fast food. There's just no effort.
It reminds me of the poker industry a little bit. I work in the poker industry writing, and the poker industry's got a problem at the moment, in as much as if you went online and played a tournament, you'd be there for 12 to 15 hours if you won it. Mm-hmm. And they're finding that the customers don't have that much time. They only have some quick spurts while they're on the toilet. So they're creating games that are going to give them a faster adrenaline hit, quicker, and is over in a couple of minutes. Now, if you are used to that and your modus operandi of coming is actually through that methodology of pornography, and that high boom, boom, boom in your face, it's just going, there's no build up to it or anything. And let's face it, we've got millions of videos we can choose from online now for free. When it then comes to actually having sex with your partner, the whole, you've now got to switch mode and think, now I'm in this game this is a long-term game now. This is going to last, 10 minutes? All of a sudden becomes an absolute lifetime compared to a minute.
Right.
And I could see how the two of them become very complicated. On back to this guy again. The other thing is they have a lot of kids. It seems like the household is very, very busy. Mm-hmm. Don't have a lot of time to themselves. And I couldn't help thinking, I'm terrible for just thinking about myself personally and projecting my personal images on the world. But I couldn't help thinking, I've got one kid here, 18 months. Like, I had sex last night, and there was a real part of me. As soon as my missus gave me an indication that she was horny, I was like, Ricky, come on, we got to get this done quickly. Because if we don't get this done quickly, she's going to be waking up. Right. What a passion killer. Yeah. Because we know, we especially know, don't we? Women aren't going to be as fast as men when it comes to what a quickie to a woman and a quickie to a man are completely two different things, right?
Right. But we still miss the point, and I think that's a great example. It underscores this point that almost all of us tend to be goal-oriented during sex. So when you say a quickie, it's like we got to hurry up and orgasm instead of seeing sex as an opportunity to step out of the stresses of life and just be in this erotic space of mutual pleasuring and satisfaction, right? So often I tell couples, to use a football analogy, we're getting rid of the goals. There's no direction now that you need to go. The goal, it's more like the floor exercises in gymnastics. We can cover the field and play on the entire field and not worry about getting to the goal.
I like
because
that.
the goal is the mutual pleasure, not the orgasm. The orgasm is a result.
I'll tell you a story. My wife has been me and my wife have been in California for 6 months. And since the baby's been born, sex has just been completely off the menu, right? And I totally understand and get that. And recently, as I spoke on the Rosalind Disciavo podcast, we had a change where we flipped it, and I said, okay, I'm always going to be up for it. I'm always going to be ready. I'm always going to be game. You can be the instigator at all times, right? And we've played by that rule so far, and it's worked out for the both of us. But what I did is I bought some condoms, right? Now, I bought some condoms because I don't want another baby right now. And the orgasm when you're in penetrative mode, we'll say, to just use that term, is obviously going to be a lot stronger than if I was to pull it out before I ejaculated, right? So I bought some condoms for that purpose. However, my track history with condoms is not very good, Ricky. Again, I've built up this psychological narrative that if I wear a condom, I'll lose an erection. And the first time I wore a condom a couple of weeks ago, I did, during intercourse, lost an erection. And my wife straight away said to me, "Is that the condom?" And I said, "It is." Now, last night, I said to myself, okay, and the other thing that happened was I was fixated on coming before I lost my erection, which meant that the whole act of sex was completely isolated from any connection between me and my wife.
You're making my point.
Yeah, and this
that lunging for the finish line.
Yeah. And then this time last night, I got the condom out, I put it next to me, and straight away, the voice in my brain said to me, "You're going to lose your erection, Lee." And I said to it, "I don't care. I am just going to focus 100% on my wife. That's what I'm going to do. And if the baby wakes up halfway through it, I don't care. I'll get up, I'll clean myself up, I'll go deal with it. I'm not going to be rushing here." And it was fantastic. We both enjoyed it. And do you know the other thing up last night, Ricky, that I was thinking about? I looked at her, and we laughed about something that had happened during sex. We laughed it in each other's face. And in that moment, I thought to myself, do you know what? I could have a conversation with her right now. But it didn't fit into the script that I have learned in 43 years of what sex should be, which is put your head to the side of her head. Don't bug her too much. Don't stick your tongue in her ear because it'll make her giggle, and just get on with it until it's finished, right? Why can't you talk? Why can't you have a laugh? Why can't you just mess about?
I ask those questions all the time, and really that's just perfect for setting the stage for so much sexual dysfunction. People are not having fun when they're having sex, and if you're not having fun having sex, what are you having fun at all? Right? That's another cutesy little thing I like to throw out. It's only sex work if you're getting paid for it. Otherwise, it's supposed to be sex play. And even if you're a sex worker, you're entitled to be playful and enjoy what you're doing. Where did this rule come that we're not supposed to laugh during sex? Oh, it has to be deadly serious. It's fun and pleasurable, not to mention bodies do weird, goofy things. Noises happen, or faces get weird. Why is it so terrible to laugh, have a laugh, and share, a little conversation? It's not an anathema if we get out of that script. The same thing you're describing, I tell a lot of guys, ED is not losing an erection. Every guy's going to lose an erection at some point or another. ED is the reaction we have to losing the erection. Because then, as you just described, now that's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Now there are guys that sit in the bar looking at a woman clear down the end of the bar. Gee, she's attractive. I'd love to have sex with her. Let me buy her a drink. And he's already fast forwarding. He's home, naked, in bed, having sex, failing, and being humiliated. And he hasn't even approached and asked her name yet.
Yeah.
That's the self-fulfilling prophecy that becomes, the dysfunction.
Well, to me, there's a lot of parallels between those internal narratives that we create that become our personality and part of our sexual personality. The same with alcohol. So, there's a lot of people who, like somebody this weekend on the forum, they were creating a meal for 14 business colleagues of her husband's. And think about it, Ricky, you're making a meal for 14 people. I mean, that's going to stress anybody out, right? I mean, you're going to get overwhelmed with that. But if you have a story and a narrative that you've created psychologically and embedded it as a rule in your life, that when you get overwhelmed, the only way that you can relieve that overwhelm is to have a drink, then that is what is going to happen. If you've told yourself in your mind that when you wear a condom, you're going to lose an erection, that is what is going to happen, right? And look, I don't have all the answers. I had sexual dysfunction, losing erection during sexual intercourse for a couple of years. I just could not get it out of my head. Even knowing it was in my head, I couldn't get it out of my head. But Ricky, that was because I didn't do the work. I just thought it would just go away. I didn't see a sex therapist. I didn't do cognitive behavioral therapy. I didn't take any medication, nothing. I didn't do anything. I mean, so how is anything going to change, right? We have to go and seek out experts like Ricky, Rosalind, and do some work around this, right?
Yeah, I'm real fond of Roz. I'm grateful that she connected you to me, and I have a lot of admiration for her as a sexuality educator and also a trainer of sex therapists. You reminded me before this. Well, I kind of left a point dangling about men and desire. The new edition of the DSM that came out in 2015 changed the rules a little bit. That now this HSDD, this low desire thing, is only diagnosable in men. And I was really surprised because, like I said, this seems so tailor-made for typical women's complaints. Women have a new diagnosis now, which I'm still trying to wrap my head around. Women are diagnosed with a sexual interest/arousal disorder. Men are only diagnosed with low desire. And I think, it took me a couple of years, but I starting to clarify that it fits with a lot of these gender stereotypes, that men are horny pig dogs, ready, willing, and able for sex at any opportunity, which of course we know is just simply not true. And that women are the kind of gatekeepers. And then, carrying that stereotype way of thinking a step further, is what you said before. This woman described that sex-love thing. Mm. So the game that's often played is women are the gatekeepers to sex and men are the gatekeepers to love. That's what they hold over each other. Right? The woman says, I don't think I'm going to give you this. And the guy says, well, I'm going to deny you that feeling that you need, right? Not surprising that a lot of these guys that get so diagnosed with low desire, we find out that they have plenty of desire, just not for her. Mm. Or she has plenty of desire, just not for her partner. Of course, I don't want to be heterosexist and exclude same-sex couples because a lot of the problems are just the same, right? People say, how do you do sex therapy with a gay couple? Same way I do with a straight couple. It's a couple. Mm. You got to find out what their issues are and what's going on, but it's another subject. So desire is really can be an elusive thing because we assume that it's another urge like hunger or thirst or having to go to the bathroom. A lot of couples say, but when there's a discrepancy, again, this couple might also fit into that category of a desire discrepancy where one partner is the higher desire partner. In this case, it sounds like the woman who wrote in, and the guy is the lower desire partner. Of course, well, there's another sexist bit to that, right? Men have never really had to take that personally. because they've had the luxury of saying, women, right? They're all like that. You got to beg them and do contortions and get a couple drinks in them and promise them everything just to get him in bed. But if a woman's with a guy who says he doesn't feel like having sex, invariably she's going to take it personally. She'll feel like, well, I thought all guys are horny and think about sex all the time. I got the one guy who's not, or maybe he's gay, or he's not into me. That's the only conclusion. Sometimes partners of guys will watch the erection out of the corner of their eye as if that's a barometer of how into it we are and how much we're enjoying it. That if it goes down a little bit, there's this panic. Uh-oh. Yeah. Oh my God, I knew it. He's thinking of somebody else. I've gained weight since the kid was born. This whole now she's in her head. And he's probably in his head going, oh my God, don't disappoint me, buddy. Don't do this again. And they're on a roll that's only going to get worse.
I'm laughing because this is probably 99.9% of couples in the world. They're both in bed trying to have a bit of hunky-dory, and really they just want to not look at each other and just make each other come, because everything else is just too complicated in their head. Again, another giant irony in this is that it comes down to intimacy. That we grow up thinking intimacy is, how we were intimate together. Yeah. But that, like you said, don't make eye contact, get it over with, focus on the orgasm instead of being present. There's a lot of people that can't have sex unless it's completely dark and they got a good buzz on. Yeah.
So what does that tell you about that nakedness I mentioned before?
Okay, let's just bring this back to alcohol again then. So,
and I think it relates.
Yeah, let's just bring this back to alcohol, and then let's just make this point. What we're saying about this couple, and obviously if you're listening to this, is it's nigh on impossible for Ricky to offer a lot of advice on this, because every single person will have a different nuance, and there'll be lots of different factors that Ricky would have to learn and understand over a period of time working with them. So let's make sure we underline that. But what we are saying here, I think Ricky's going to tell me if I'm wrong, is if we're drinking and you're the type of person who's watching this podcast, so you're not in control of your drinking is controlling you, then if we're doing that, then a lot of different aspects of your life, you're not fully aware or fully present when you're in them. And that could be in your work. It could be how you talk to your friends. Could be how you interact with your mum. It could be how you father your children or mother your children. And it could be how you have sex, right? And it's not until we stop drinking or we stop taking drugs and we actually feel the pain and suffering of our existing relationship, along with the joy and the happiness, that we then can look at it and go, fuck me. I see it now. I don't need the DSM and all the bloody big complicated acronyms. This is more simple than that. I'm just really have never, ever in my life connected with another woman underneath the sheets. Ever. I've just literally been trying to come as quick as I can after the woman has come. And that has always been my goal. Make her come so she's satisfied, she thinks I'm brilliant. Then I can come before I lose my erection or whatever. The kids burst in, job done. And we realize in that moment that our problems were a lot more complicated than this. And
we complicate them a lot more than this. I mean, even in just I could jump on something you just said, which is also in the script for almost everybody, especially we Y chromosome carriers. That we think our job is to make our partner come, and that we get validation and we know, I'm a good lover. I can, I'm a stud. Sex is not it's not anybody's responsibility to get the other off. Sex is people getting off together. So we don't make our partner come. Our partner comes while we come. And another thing that's often missed because of that focus on performance, especially for guys, is even noticing our partner's pleasure. We know for a fact that our partner's pleasure gets us off. Yes. But we're so busy, so intent on being good and being big enough and hard enough and lasting long enough, not too long, not too quick, that we don't even notice whether our partner is into it or not. I mean, this classic old lie about faking orgasms. Why is that even a thing?
Yeah.
Why do women fake orgasms? Number one, to defend our ego. because they don't want to make us feel bad. Oh, sorry, loser, get off, this ain't happening. No, they go, oh, great, wonderful.
It's not for me. It's never been about faking orgasms. It's the sounds that it's faking the sounds, not the it's having sex with someone who is just fucking shouting the rooftops off. And then several years later, when you've got kids and you're doing exactly the same thing, and there's no noise, and it's like, well, what the fuck happened before then? You know? Yeah. And then you realize in that moment, oh right, she's trying to make me feel good. Now, here's the thing I want to put you here, Ricky, because I think it might be an instructional point. You said then that men who want to make women come, we'll just say, focus on that a minute, it's because they want to be a good lover and very ego driven. For me, it was slightly different. For me, it was selfishness. It was guilt. It was shame. It was, if I have sex with this woman right now and I come and she doesn't, then that is a very selfish act for me. Now, really important, I exist in a relationship where that is an issue outside of sex. So I've built up a narrative over many, many years that I'm a selfish guy, that I'm a narcissist, that I take care after number one. And my wife will tell me that I behave like that. So that perpetuates the story. So when we're in bed together, I move into that role, and I'm like, okay, I've really got to make sure that this woman enjoys herself before I even focus on me, which under normal circumstances, we all want to make our partner enjoy things. But I think having that kind of like big wart of a reason stuck to it kind of sanitizes it and doesn't make it a very nice experience,
See, I was with you until that last part. I love the fact I wish more guys were raised to be other-centered lovers. I think women kind of automatically are, because it's just in the script. Like, even if they don't enjoy it, they're supposed to, because, right, the wifely duties and all that crap. But that performance pressure causes so much anxiety. Again, it's work, it's not play, that we just miss out on the pleasure part. So it's wonderful to hear a guy describing this desire to be focused on his partner's pleasure. But it's still, that narrative is still gets in the way, because the reality is we are a bit selfish and objectifying during sex. That's the other thing you hear about porn. Oh, it objectifies women. When we objectify each other. We objectify our bodies as part of the turn on, right? And he says, oh no, I'm attracted to his wit. Really? He's short and fat and bald and hairy, and you're attracted to his wit? That turns you on? Sometimes it's, I don't want to perpetuate these sexist things. I was going to talk about secondary gain, and that's another reality. Sometimes sex is used as a currency, even in relationships. I know that's almost the definition of prostitution.
I've been there, definitely. I mean, you mentioned it earlier on, guys often trade love, and women often trade sex. And I imagine in a relationship where it's turned around and the woman has a greater libido than the man, the same thing happens again. I know that I always felt very impotent, not physically, but I felt impotent and demasculated in a way, having to beg for sex, or knowing that this person could just say yay or nay for something that was really important to me at that time. And that's why I think it was really important for me to say to Liza, look, here are the reins. I understand your situation. I understand that me nagging you to have sex puts you in an uncomfortable position. And I don't want that. So let's work this one out and see if you initiate it. And last night I broke that rule. We were talking on the settee, and I just got that connection, and I said, fancy a bit? And she said, yep. So I felt comfortable in that moment. That wasn't nagging. If she would have turned around and said no, I would have said, okay, cool.
Right.
no worries. Let's just carry on talking, you know?
Think about how many guys do beg and whine and complain like adolescent boys for hours.
I've been there, Ricky.
And then get this response. Okay,
Go
fine.
on. Go on then.
Fine, make it quick. No, that's a no in my book. There are a lot of guys that go, yes, she consented.
That's a no. That leads me to another question. How, in this case of the couple we just talked about, what do you think about the guy's obviously doesn't want it as often for whatever reason it is as his female partner. What do you think of him just getting her off, minus all that connection, in order to kind of like balance it up a bit? So yeah, we know we need to balance it up and connect more, but because she's a lot more sexually active than he is, then sometimes you've just got to play the game and just get her off. If she's happy with that, is that acceptable in a relationship?
I believe so, but I would also have to believe that even if it was that selfless, well, I don't feel like it, but I'll get my partner off. Chances are, my partner's pleasure is going to change my mind, right? There's two ways of thinking about desire. This is also a relatively new kind of 21st century contribution to the discussion, because everything was based on Masters and Johnson from the 1960s. And sex was seen as linear, that first you had this arousal, this sustained plateau, then orgasm and resolution. In the 80s, a therapist that trained my mentor, a giant in the field named Helen Singer Kaplan, reminded everyone, and Masters and Johnson, that they kind of left out desire as the locomotive that pulls this train. But around 2000, a researcher named Rosemary Basson from Toronto, I think, offered, I wish you wouldn't have called it a female model, but an alternative nonlinear model for sexual response. She called it a model for female sexual response, and introduced this idea that arousal can come first. Kissing, touching, caressing, and then desire follows it. So this kind of, well, honey, I'm not in the mood. I'm sorry. As soon as I'm horny, you'll be the first one to know. I'll come running. And the weeks go by, and the months go by, and the years go by. Yeah. Instead of, just like you said, I'm not really feeling it, but I want to do this for my partner. Same thing when there's this split with masturbating, right? If a couple's in bed and the guy says, hey, you fancy a bit, and she says, no, I don't feel like I have a headache. What's he going to do? Slide out of the bed, go downstairs to the library, log on the computer, and masturbate to porn. Instead, and I credit New York psychiatrist Steve Snyder with this suggestion, if he just stays in bed next to her and says, hey, you feel like, she says, no, I have a headache. He says, you mind if I just lie here next to you and pleasure myself and touch your leg while I do? She might say, fine, go ahead, and sit there reading her book. Or she might change her mind and decide to join in when she sees what's going on, right? It's that idea that it's a gift, it's giving, it's not obligatory.
Do you know what all this comes back to, Ricky?
Yeah.
All this comes back to communication. That everything comes back to communicate. I've been there in bed saying, fancy a bit? No. Well, I'm not getting out of bed because it's cold. I'm just going to get on with it here. And my wife's gone, okay, get on with it. And then I've said, do you mind if I look at you while I do it? And she's like, oh, sure, and vice versa, mine, not just me, but one of the most joyous moments in my life, because I've been married twice, been in, 2 long-term relationships, was when I realized that my wife now today, Liza, was just more open about those type of things. Like, it was just like, yeah, it really, in a way, I had to get used to it because I was so used to this stereotypical male-female picture in my mind about how we think and act sexually. That when I realized that there was a woman here that fits into the stereotypical male role of wanting lots of sex, being quite willing to just say, hey, can you just get me off? And I don't want you to get. I literally want it over and done with in 10 seconds. Those type of things. I was like, it felt like a pressure had been lifted off me all of a sudden, that now I could actually be more open and be more my natural, authentic self. So I'm always, and I think that's why, although I worried about it, I didn't worry about it to the point where it made me ill when I had sexual dysfunction for a couple of years. I always felt really comfortable that my wife was not going to go anywhere because we were able to talk about it and all the reasons around it and that type of thing. So
yeah, that's just you just put a perfect cap on it. That's really what it's about. The idea of taking it personally. That woman was talking about, if she has to initiate all the time, she doesn't feel so desired. Like you said, even if just in the short term, if that's the way it has to be, a lot of recovery people like this cliche of fake it till you make it. I think there's some validity to that of wanting to be a better lover, and, finding that response kind of happens. Our bodies know what to do. It's our brain that gets in the way.
Definitely. Do you know what I've noticed as I've got older, Ricky? And I'll put this to you, and then we'll call it a day. For me now, at 43 years of age, it's become much more biological for me than ever before. And that term sounds horrendous. So let me explain. When my wife came over from Los Angeles, and this has happened a lot of times during our relationship when we've been apart from each other for a long time, I felt an incredible biological urge to make love to my wife. If she come anywhere near me, she would just kiss me or touch me. There would be pre-ejaculate, just like that. It was biological, right? And then I'd have sex, and then nothing for a really long time, and then something else happens, and I'm there again. What's going on there, Ricky? Because I've never felt like that when I was younger. Is it an age thing? What's going on?
Well, I think it's too easy to say it's an age thing because, testosterone naturally declines, and I suppose we're not as horny at 40 as we are at 15, where, we talk about the recipe for an erection, friction, and fantasy. When we're 15, a good stiff breeze is all the friction you need, right? And the fantasy machine is just running constantly. But I think still, you say biologically, that's still about that. I would argue that that's still psychological, because everything that happens in our body happens in response to what our brain is doing. Desire happens here. So you see your partner, you smell something, you get a thought, you catch a side breast, whatever it is, and the brain goes, "Oh, it's sexy time." I hear this complaint often too from more solid couples, but again, guys have a hard time with the idea of intimate, non-sexual touch. So a couple sitting watching TV, and the wife feels like reaching out and rubbing his neck or something like that, and he gets an erection and wants to have sex. So she stops touching him because I just wanted to touch you. I didn't want to have, right? So that starts to split also.
We talked to Rosalind about that, because that come up as an issue of people in Strive Community Forum being reluctant to give their partners massages. These are all women. We're reluctant to give them massages or pay them any to connect with them in any way, because any sign of physical connection was always lead to, come on, let's have sex, which then put them under pressure to want to have
perform. That's why so much sex therapy starts with taking intercourse off the table. Sometimes if it's really severe, we have to take any kind of sexual activity off the table for a time and get them used to being together, again, figuratively naked, not just literally naked, and relax. This is the thing that we also don't get growing up, and I think it's key. Good sex lives right there in that balance between relaxation and arousal. Too much arousal spills into anxiety. Too much relaxation's like, remember the classic Dead Kennedys anthem, "Too drunk to fuck." It just does, whiskey dick and everything else like that. So you got to find that sweet spot. Erection is actually a relaxation phenomenon, not an excitement one. Right. Coming is excitement, but getting aroused, we have to be relaxed. So couples need a little practice sometimes. That's kind of an irony of sex therapy. It seems oxymoronic. Everybody says they want sex to be spontaneous, but if it's problematic, then you have to plan it for a while so that it can be spontaneous without all that anxiety rushing in. And
that takes me back to that couple though. How could you possibly be relaxed in a household with 6 kids?
Well, you have to be intentional and take the time out.
Right.
And when the kids are asleep, or you get a babysitter if possible, or if people,
Go
have
somewhere
needs.
else.
Yeah, go to the Motel 6 down the block. You don't have to
Yeah.
go out of town. Just, right, anything that shows not only can the couple work on the problem, but it shows them, they show each other that they're making this a priority.
Definitely.
Right.
Well, Ricky, really enjoyed your time. I've learned some.
It went by too quickly. Thanks.
It went back like one of my early. It went as quick as one of my early masturbation
I really enjoyed this.
I really enjoyed it.
I'd love to come back anytime you'll have me.
Yeah, definitely. I'll leave links so everybody can connect with you and all that kind of stuff. Thanks for joining us at Trooper Alcohol.
Truly my pleasure.